woke to reality, losing its grip on me. Oh, where have I gone? 'Cause I can see the light before I see the sunrise. You called and you shouted, broke through my deafness. Now I'm breathing in, breathing out. I'm alive again. You shattered my darkness, washed away my blindness. Now I'm breathing in, breathing out. I'm alive again. Lady, I loved you. You waited for me, I searched for you. What took me so long? I was still looking outside, as if love would ever want to hide. Finding I was wrong, 'cause I feel the wind before it hits my skin. You called and you shouted, broke through my deafness. Now I'm breathing in, breathing out. I'm alive again. You shattered my darkness, washed away my blindness. Now I'm breathing in, breathing out. I'm alive Cause I want you, yes I want you, and I need you, and I'll do whatever I have to, just to get through. 'Cause I love you, yes I love you. You called and you shouted, broke through my deafness. Now I'm breathing in, breathing out. I'm alive again. You shattered my darkness, washed away my blindness. Now I'm breathing in, breathing out. I'm alive again. Your faith can move the mountains. Let the mountains move. We come with expectation, waiting here for you. We're waiting here for you. With our hands lifted high in prayer, and it's you we adore, singing Hallelujah. You are everything you promised. Your faithfulness is true. We're desperate for your presence. All we need is you. We're waiting here for you.
Well, again, welcome to Crossroads Church. We're really glad that you're all here. Before you have a seat, turn and say hello to the people you're standing near.
Lately I've been losing sleep, dreaming about the things that we could be. But baby, I've been playing hard. Said no more counting dollars, we'll be counting stars. And we'll be counting stars. Swinging vines, swing my heart across the line. On my face are flashing signs. Stick it out and you should find old, but I'm not that old. Young, but I'm not that bold. I don't think the world is sold, just doing what we're told. I feel something so right, doing the wrong thing. I feel something so wrong, doing the right thing. Everything that kills me makes me feel alive. I've been losing sleep, dreaming about the things that we could be. But baby, I've been playing hard. So no more counting dollars, we'll be counting stars. Lately, I've been losing sleep, dreaming about the things that we could be. But baby, I've been playing hard. So no more counting dollars, we'll be counting stars. I feel love, I feel it burn down this river every turn. Hope is a four-letter word. Make that money, watch it burn. Old, but I'm not that old. Young, but I'm not that bold. I don't think the world is sold, just doing what we're told. I feel something so wrong, doing the right thing. I could lie. Everything that drowns me makes me wanna fly. I've been losing sleep, dreaming about the things that we could be. But baby, I've been playing hard. So no more counting dollars, we'll be counting stars. Baby, I've been losing sleep, dreaming about the things that we could be. But baby, I've been playing hard. So no more counting dollars, we'll be counting stars. Oh, I'm take that money, watch it burn, sink in the river, the lessons I've learned. Take that money, watch it burn, sink in the river, the lessons I've learned. Take that money, watch it burn, sink in the river, the lessons I've learned. Take that money, watch it burn, sink in the river, the lessons I've learned. Everything that kills me makes me feel alive. I've been losing sleep, dreaming about the things that we should be. But baby, I've been playing hard. So no more counting dollars, we'll be counting stars. Baby, I've been losing sleep, dreaming about the things that we could be. But baby, I've been playing hard. So no more counting dollars, we'll be
Test, all right. Sorry, Josh, my bad. Hey, I want to welcome you all to Crossroads today. My name is Rod, and we're in a season when Christmas is coming, and over the next several weeks, we're going to be talking about Christmas every single week. And we recognize some of you are new, or maybe you missed what took place last year. But here's a look back at what took place. Let's take a look.
I feel like you're sinking this Christmas. I think how fortunate I am to be able to stand up on this stage every Christmas, most weekends here at the church, and to be able to say to people, it doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, where you've been in life. You have never sunk so low that God cannot reach out to you and lift you up. And God sent his son, Jesus Christ, to earth to be that one that would rescue you and give you a new beginning and strength for new tomorrows and a new life.
Well, we're going to have a great time this Christmas, and we have 6 services that we're offering this particular season. 2 on Tuesday, December 23rd at 5:30 and 7 p.m., and then 4 on Wednesday, the 24th at 1, 2:30, 4, and 5:30 p.m. And as we think about these services, I like to think of 2 ways. One of them, it's a great opportunity to get involved. In fact, we have this thing called Christmas Serve on the tables on your way out. You can grab a flyer. And what we do is, because of the extra services, this is a great time to jump in on a one-time basis to help shore up our guest teams, kids, tech, and even our facilities and setup team. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And the second thing I want to encourage all of us to do is, we're entering in a time of the year when people are open and actually looking for some type of service to attend. And we have these invite cards. We have a few stacks out front. We want to encourage you to grab as many of these as you can and take an opportunity to invite someone. That would be great. Now, as we enter this season is also marked by a word called generosity. And this is a very, very generous church, and for annually we make this opportunity presented to us that if you look in the middle portion of your program, we have this thing called our year-end gift. And what we're encouraging all of us here at Crossroads to do is pray about considering giving a gift up and above your regular normal giving efforts. Then this helps fund our vision for the upcoming year. And in 2015, we believe we have some great things in store. So we'll encourage you to think about how you can give toward our year-end giving fund. That would be great. And then the last thing is, if you look on the front of your program, we're in a new series called Christmas Stories. And this is a Christmas series, but it's a bit of a twist, as we're going to be looking back at the very first Christmas and look at 4 individual stories of people's lives that intersected and responded to the birth of Christ. And Dennis Anderson, one of our pastors, gave a great message last night and earlier today, and as we look at the life of Herod. So you're in for a great learning experience. Now, at this time, we're going to continue on in our service as we give back to God through our tithes and offerings, and this is a regular part of our worship practice for those of us who call Crossroads their home. So let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather. We thank you for this opportunity to worship, and we trust that you will use what you receive to continue and further the work to see more people reach for you. So with that, we give you this service in Christ's name. Amen. Now, before the ushers come forward during one of our songs to receive the offering, we're going to show a video. And as you watch this video, if you're new, I think this gives a great picture of what Crossroads is all about. And we also want to encourage you that this is what your giving goes toward. And also, I think you'd be very encouraged about whom you'd invite this Christmas. Enjoy.
My name is Jim Sturgis, and this is my story. I became a Christ follower at about the age of 6. Was baptized at that time and enjoyed it very much. Along about 1966, I was 17 years old and probably a little on the edgy side. My brother and myself, and still going to church, but got tired of being preached down to, told that I was going to go to hell for the things I was doing. So my brother and I decided to walk away at that time. At 1982, things started to unravel quite a bit in my life. Was working about 70, 80 hours a week. Almost felt like I deserted my family and my wife and my children. And along about that same time, my mother was terribly ill, who had been a great Christian woman her entire life, and she suffered for years. And I thought, how could there be a God and let her suffer the way she suffered? At that point in time, I really think I became an agnostic. I never became an atheist, but I was an agnostic just because I didn't know. I didn't know if he cared about me. I didn't think he did. I didn't know if he was really there or not anymore. I thought, if there is a God, how could he do some of the things that happened in my life in that period of time? So when I went to bed at night, I didn't pray anymore. I didn't think about God. I didn't think about church. 24 years, the only time I was in a church was for a wedding and a funeral. During those 24 years, I felt like God had kicked me to the side of the road. So I didn't care about him. I didn't care about the Bible. I didn't pray. I didn't care about church, and I sure didn't want to be around those church people anymore. In 2006, my oldest son, Jason, invited me to come to a Christmas Eve service at Crossroads. I had seen what God had done in my son's life over the last couple of years. And when he asked me to come that Christmas Eve, I finally said, why not? When I was driving up to the church that night with my wife, I was almost afraid. I thought, I haven't been in a church service for 24 years. Is the building going to fall down? I walked into the auditorium and told my wife I wanted to sit in the bleachers, as far away from the front of the church as possible. I sat there, and the opening song, I can't remember what it was, but it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I think I did hear God that night, to tell you the truth. I think he said, welcome back, Jim. He said, come on back. And I was glad to be back. I mean, it was just like a transformation. Today, it's a different story. Christ is in my life. He's first in my life. I feel the love of God every day as I walk. I know I'm not walking alone anymore. When I invite somebody to come to Christmas Eve service this year, I pray that they'll experience the same thing that I experienced 8 years ago, because I know that it'll make a difference in their lives.
The world waits for a miracle. The heart longs for a little bit of hope. Oh come, Emmanuel. A child prays for peace on earth, and she's calling out from a sea of hurt. Oh come, Emmanuel. Can you hear the angels singing? Glory to the light of the world. Glory, the light of the world. drought breaks with the tears of a mother. Babies cry as the sound of love. Come down, Emmanuel. Here's the song for the suffering. Here's Messiah, the Prince of Peace has come. He has come, Emmanuel. And glory to the light of the world. For all who hunger, for all who pray, for all who wonder, behold your King, behold Messiah, world waits for a miracle. The heart longs for a little bit of hope. Oh come, Emmanuel.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Soon the bells will start.
And the thing that will make them ring is the carol that you sing right within your heart.
Christmas music, you like it? How many of you like Christmas music? Oh yeah, most everybody does. Turn to the person next to you and tell them what your favorite Christmas song is. Just tell them, favorite Christmas song. What do you think is the most favorite Christmas song of all time? Any guesses? White Christmas, #1 song, Christmas song of all time. Most of these songs tell a story, don't they? Like Up on the Housetop tells a story of how Santa fills our stockings, right? And Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer tells a story of, well, you can picture that, right? Well, I want to play a little clip of another Christmas song that tells another story. Let's see if you can figure out what the song is. Anybody recognize that? You've heard it probably. It's called Coventry Carol. But you don't want to listen to the words very closely, because the story it talks about is the slaughter of all of these little boys at King Herod's order under the age of 2 in the vicinity of Bethlehem. So you're not going to hear kids' choirs singing this song in the mall. You're not going to want to sing this song to your child on Christmas Eve to get him to go to sleep. Let me read some of the words. Herod the king in his raging charged he hath this day his men of might in his own sight all young children to slay. Night night, honey. He's not going to do that. You know, we love these Christmas songs with words like silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, until that silent night is shattered by the sound of the thundering hooves of a Roman death squad riding into Bethlehem to kill all those little kids, and the screams of parents as they're ripped out of their hands. And that phrase from Joy to the World, let earth receive her king, cost 20 to 30 boys their lives. Well, on that positive note, Merry Christmas, everybody. And when I told Barbara, my wife, what I was speaking on, she goes, how are you going to teach that story without people leaving depressed? And I said, well, so I'm just telling, hang with me. I think I can do it. All right? I think I can do it. You know, the writers of the Jesus biographies, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, had an enormous amount of material to choose from when they wrote their accounts of Jesus' life. Luke focuses on Mary and dazzled-eyed shepherds and angel choirs. Matthew talks about the scandal of Mary's pregnancy, and then he picks up the story, virtually ignores the birth, and picks up the story here in Matthew 2. It's in your program and it's on the screen there. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, where is the one who's been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. In Bethlehem in Judea, they replied. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him. So the Magi go to Bethlehem, give Jesus his gifts, and then secretly leave the country without reporting back to Herod. Here's the rest of the story. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious. And he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. I mean, why does Matthew tell the story like this? You know, the scandal of Mary's pregnancy, psychopathic King Herod, and this clandestine escape of Jesus to Egypt. Well, I want to give you 3 reasons why I think this difficult story, painful story, is in our Christmas story, and why we're kicking off the series with it. And I think you're actually going to leave the service encouraged. So here we go. The first reason why Matthew includes this is to tell us that the Christian life is a fight. Jesus did come to bring peace, and he did. But he also brought a fight, this opposition. Matthew 10:34 says, don't suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth, not just peace. I didn't come to bring just peace, but a sword. You see, there's a title that the Magi use when they're asking Herod that causes the fur on the back of Herod's neck to just stand up. They ask him, hey Herod, where's the one born King of the Jews? And Herod's going, wait. I'm the King of the Jews. By the way, there is no other king. And if there is, I'm going to find that little vermin and I'm going to exterminate him. I mean, that's Herod. You know, Herod was king of Israel for about 40 years and became known as Herod the Great. But he was not the true king of Israel in the biblical sense. He was religiously Jewish, but he was culturally Greek, politically Roman, and ethnically an Arab. And after Caesar was assassinated, there was this political upheaval all over the Roman Empire, and in Israel included. And Herod, who was in Rome, made friends with Mark Antony. And Mark Antony said to him, hey Herod, you want to be a king? Fine, go to Israel. If you can conquer it, you can be the king. So Herod left, took some troops, started in the north, and worked his way south. But he was brutal and brilliant at the same time. One time there were some freedom fighters holed up in a cave of Arbel. And they couldn't get through the cave's entrance. So he took some big vats of oil and heated them to boiling. And then he dumped them down through the cracks in the roof of that cave and scalded all of those freedom fighters to death. Kind of brutal. When he had finally taken control of Israel, the country, he massacred every family member from the previous king's family. Then he had 35 religious leaders and then killed, and then one day, just in a fit of rage, killed 3 other nobles. He didn't trust his own family either. He had in all 10 wives. He had his favorite wife and her mother and grandfather killed. And he had 3 of his own sons slaughtered because he was paranoid about their political aspirations. The Emperor Augustus said of Herod, "It's better to be Herod's pig than his son. You would fare better." And if that's what Herod does to political potential rivals in his family, imagine what he'd do to someone not in his family. In the story, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, remember that Christmas story? The Herdman kids decide they're going to do this play. And they were fascinated with this guy they called King Harold. And so in their play at the end, they decided we're going to have Harold beat up and executed in the final scene. But that's not exactly how the story goes. Near the end of Herod's life, he was about to die, and so this is what he did. He rounded up a couple thousand leaders in the country and had them trapped, imprisoned in the Hippodrome in Jericho. And then he commanded this, he made this order. The moment I die, I want archers to kill every last person in that Hippodrome. You see, he knew people were not going to mourn him when he died. But he wanted to make sure that everybody in the country would mourn the day he died. Now his sister, and Herod did die a few days later, and his sister lifted, that order was never carried out. But that's the kind of guy Herod was. So that when the text says that Herod was disturbed, all Jerusalem was disturbed, because if the king's disturbed, heads were going to roll. 2 kings in the same kingdom meant war. In the book Basic Christianity, John Stott says that when people get a real glimpse of who Jesus is and what he's up to, there were really 3 responses. Fear, people would try to get away from him. Fury, they tried to get rid of him. Numerous times they tried to stone and kill Jesus. Or faith, they would bow down in faith in complete surrender. And of course, Herod's response was fear and then fury. He went after Jesus because he was afraid, and he would try to get rid of him. And here's why this story is in the book of Matthew. Because here's the truth about you and me. There's a little Herod in every one of us. There's a little king that says, nobody else is going to call the shots in my life but me. I'm going to be the captain of my soul. Nobody is going to be my boss. I am going to be my own boss. Jesus didn't come just to meet our needs, to forgive the main problem we have, which is our sin. He didn't come just to be our Savior only. He came to be the leader, the king of our life, because he wants to lead us into a better life. But there's something inside of us that says, no way. You ever have a child say this? You're not the boss of me. Well, we all said that, and we still are. You're not the boss of me. I mean, this starts really young. Starts in kids. I found some toddler rules this week, or maybe it would be better phrased, toddler's rule. Here's 2 of them. Number 2, if you do not like the food that someone tells you to eat, throw it on the floor in disgust. Then at your cat. And then if you're really brave, at your mom. For extra credit, smash the remaining food into your hair and clothes. When you're given something to drink, dump it on the floor. Number 1 rule for toddlers. Everything in the world belongs to you. Feel free to touch it, take it, hide it, throw it, smash it, break it, and completely ruin it. Hint, all of the phones belong to you. Hide them in the toilet. There's a little Herod that comes out really early in a kid's life, isn't there? He keeps emerging, he keeps coming out. In fact, Paul diagnosed the problem. He says in Romans 8:7, the mind governed by the flesh is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law, nor can it do so. Eugene Peterson said, most people don't really want God. They want what they want, but they want God's help to get it. And we see this in our culture. We see this open discussion or fight about whether or not God exists. Because there's a group of people that do not want anybody ruling the world or the universe. There's a group called New Atheists, and a portion of them call themselves the Brights. And one of the most aggressive and outspoken of these is named Richard Dawkins, who wrote the New York Times best-selling book, The God Delusion. And he helped fund and initiate this advertising campaign in England where they put this sign on buses. There's probably no God. Now stop worrying and enjoy your life. You know, here's a group of people that got together and raised money to say, they put this on over 800 buses driving around England, to say, you know what? We don't like the idea of a God, and we're going to communicate that, and we hope that you buy into this. That idea picked up. Dozens of other countries launched similar advertising campaigns with that very sign. Christians, not to be outdone, raised some money, and they put a sign on buses in the same cities, and this is what they said. There definitely is a God, so join the Christian party and enjoy your life. The fight was on, right? Well, there's a third picture. I found this picture of a bus. And I don't know if this is true or not, but there were 13 atheists on this bus, and just before it tipped over, they all said, "Oh my God." I don't know why that would be. I don't know if that's true or not. But there's something in the human heart that just rises up and says, you're not going to be the boss of me. Nobody is going to call the shots of my life but me. And we respond to this but for a number of reasons. You might be here today and you're going, you know what, I'm not a follower of Jesus because of fear. You know, Thomas Nagel, who was the professor of philosophy and art at New York University, wrote this. He said, I speak from experience, being strongly subject to this fear of religion myself. I want atheism to be true and am made uneasy by the fact that some of the most intelligent and well-informed people I know are religious believers. It isn't just that I don't believe in God and naturally hope that I'm right in my belief. He says, it's that I hope there's no God. I don't want there to be a God. I don't want the universe to be like that. I mean, he understands, and I think many people understand, that if we turn the leadership of our life over to God, he's going to start messing with our lives. He's going to have some expectations of us. He's going to lead our lives. We're going to have to change some things about how we spend our time, how we spend our money, what our priorities are in life, who we sleep with, when we sleep with them, what we're addicted to, what we listen to, what we eat, who we hang out with, what we might have to begin to believe some things about the Bible or God or Jesus that today we go, you know what? I could never fathom myself believing that. It's a little Herod going, don't buy into that, don't buy into that. Another response for people is extreme fury. You know, you might be here today and you're not buying this God thing because you're mad at him. You're ticked at him. He's not running the world the way you think he should, or at least he's not running your world the way you think he should. You know, that's Jim's story, right? It's what caused him to walk away from God. You prayed that something would happen, and it never did. You wanted a better job, a better salary, a better spouse, a better house, a better future, better purpose. Or maybe you prayed that something would not happen, and it did. The person you love left, or hurt you, or abused you, or rejected you, or divorced you. Or maybe the person you love died. And how could a loving God, powerful God, let that happen? I mean, if you were running the world, you certainly wouldn't run it that way. And both of those responses, extreme fury or extreme fear, are far better, frankly, than many people's casual, tepid, kind of nonchalant response to the life of Jesus. Oh, that Christmas story, you know, Jesus, a baby in the manger, you know, it's sort of like one of those Christmas myths like Santa Claus and Frosty the Snowman. I mean, it's just kind of stories. And that part in Jesus' life about the crucifixion and resurrection, not into that. And besides, Don't all religions basically say the same? Just be good. And frankly, I think I'm pretty good. At least I'm better than all them. Both of those responses, all those responses, don't quite nail it. C.S. Lewis wrote this. He says, I'm trying here to prevent anyone from saying the really foolish thing that people often say about him. I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord or God. But let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to. There's a little Herod. There's a lot of them in our world that are saying, don't buy it, don't buy it, don't buy it. But there's another response, and it's the response of extreme faith. And many of us in the room would say, you know what, I've responded to Jesus in faith. But the truth is, there's still a little residual Herod that raises his head, says, don't do it, fights against us. Romans 7, Paul writes, sometimes I do the things that I don't want to do, and I don't do the things that I knew I should do, that I know I should do. Why is it so hard to pray sometimes? I mean, for some of you this morning, just getting to church was a real fight. And there's hundreds of people, Herod's having coffee with him right now. They're not here. He won. Why is it so hard to forgive some people? Why is it so hard to make a spiritual habit actually a habit? Why is it so hard to speak up about a moral issue at work that I feel strongly about? Why do I still have these lingering doubts about the credibility of this whole Christian thing? Why is it so hard to treat my kids like I know I should? Why is it so hard not to be a workaholic? Why can't I lick this addiction? Why do I worry so much? Before Jesus could even walk or talk, he was in a fight. He was in a fight. And Herod would not go down without a fight. And we know that. We know that. You and I know that for one reason or another. So that's the first reason why Matthew included this story. And here's the second reason. Matthew wants us to know that Jesus understands wilderness experiences. When Joseph is told in a dream that Herod is going to seek him out to kill Jesus, he leaves in the middle of the night with Mary, and they make their way to Egypt, crossing a foreign border. I mean, we've all seen these pictures on TV of refugee Syrians making a border crossing with these bags on their backs. I mean, that's Joseph and Mary in the middle of the night on their way to Egypt. They probably end up in the Egyptian city of Alexandria, which actually had a very large population of Jewish refugees. In fact, historians tell us that there were more Jews in Alexandria than there were in Jerusalem at this time. A lot of people were trying to get away from Herod's influence. Jesus spent a lot of his time away from home in the wilderness. I mean, he's born in a place not his home. Right after he's born, he has to go to Egypt, which is a place not his home. Before he begins his public ministry, he spends 40 days in the wilderness, battling temptations of Satan, place in the wilderness. In fact, Matthew 8:20, Jesus says, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man wanders. Wilderness, no place to lay his head. Jesus spent the last 3 years of his life wandering in places not his home. And when he was crucified, he spent some very dark hours in a spiritual wilderness like none other. He was buried in a borrowed tomb, not in the family plot in his hometown. And here's the point of all of this. Because Jesus spent a lot of time in the wilderness of all different kinds, he understands every wilderness that you and I might be in today. It's good news. Some of you, you're lonely, for one reason or another. You feel misunderstood. Nobody understands me. Jesus spent a lot of his life around people who never really understood who he was, and some of them were his family. You might be in a bit of a culture wilderness. You've moved, you're new to the area, you don't know your way around a little bit. Jesus spent a lot of his time in new areas. God might seem very far away from you today. You're here, but he's like, you haven't heard from him in a long time. Jesus understands what it's like to feel separated from God. You might be in a wilderness of temptation. I mean, we live in a very seductive society. And those temptations might be winning. They might be running your life right now. Jesus understands what it's like to be tempted with the things that are most enticing. And he had God's help there. And some of you, maybe worst of all, might be in a wilderness of death. If someone you love is dying or has. And there's this heavy darkness that's just like this shroud, this blanket that's just over you. And you get up in the morning and it's on you, and things are dull and you're tired, and you just can't get out of this wilderness of depression, of this sadness, of this grief. A couple weeks ago, I was with some friends here at Crossroads, and they were telling me the story about a wilderness experience they had. They told me about their son who had died of a brain tumor when he was 3.5 years old. This experience happened about 13 years ago. And as I looked at that, he would tell me, he said, you know, Dennis, he said, one minute I'd be crying out to God going, why would you do this? How can you let a 3-year-old child die? He said, and then I'd fall on my knees and I'd say to God, I need you. And he said, I'd feel this overwhelming sense of the presence of God for a few minutes. And he said, I'd get up and I'd go, yeah, but my son's died and you're not doing anything about it. And then he'd get back down on his knees, and he says this went on for months and months. And the night we had this conversation, and I'm telling the story with their permission, he looked me in the eye, and there was this brightness to his eyes, and yet behind it I could see there was this dark sadness. And there was a smile on his face when he said this, but I could tell his voice was wavering, quivering. And he said, Dennis, he said, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. He said, but there's something that God and I share that few people know anything about. God and I understand what it's like to watch a son die. And he said, I feel that connection with God because he understands. He knows that in this deep, dark wilderness, God's there. He gets it. He understands. Now there, my friends, is some extreme faith right there. And this man knows, and his wife knows, and their family know, they're here every weekend, that they can trust a God who knows and has been in every single wilderness. And today you might be in a wilderness, and you might think God could never. He does. He does. He knows exactly what you're going through. And you can trust him. You can trust him in that wilderness. You can trust him there. That's the second thing that Matthew tells us. And here's the third thing. God often uses the unimportant to get his message across. See, after Herod died, Joseph wanted to go back to the Jerusalem area. It says that in the text. But because Herod's son, Archelaus, was the king there, and he was just as bad as Herod, they couldn't go to the Jerusalem area and settle there. Joseph wanted to build a new home. And I thought, well, why would he want to go there? Well, maybe because he thought, well, this is the Messiah. Maybe he should be close to the political and religious power center of the country. Or maybe he thought, Mary's been on me about that bigger house. And the economy will be much better in the city than way up there. So I can move from carpenter to construction management to land development. And we could build that house. But that isn't what happened. They had to go way north, back to this little town, this little bitty town in the sticks. I mean, it's up there, called Nazareth. And even people in Galilee, which is the state they were in, looked down on anybody who came from, they say with scorn, Nazareth. Hicksville. I mean, it's the sticks. It's out. Nothing good comes from Nazareth. You know, after last night, I used the term Hicksville, and there was a guy and his wife, they came up afterwards. They were really mad. I said, "What's up?" He goes, "My mom and her 7 brothers and sisters all grew up in Hicksville, Ohio." I said, "Well, I understand. I grew up in a Hick State, Wyoming, so we got something in common." You know, people just, they wouldn't say that. They'd say it with scorn. It'd be like we would say, "You cheer for the Oakland Raiders?" That's what we would say. But that's Nazareth. That's who it was in Nazareth. And why there? Why there? Well, here's why. Because our world thrives on ladder climbing. We always want to look up the ladder at someone who's ahead of us, who's, a couple rungs ahead. We look at Ivy League schools, or we look at Wall Street, or we look at fashion magazine, or we look at celebrities in Hollywood or sports, and we idolize them. And we either look at them with admiration or jealousy. And if we don't feel too good, we just look down the ladder and feel pretty good about ourselves because we know there's people down there. And one of the reasons why God had Jesus grow up in Nazareth, spend all of his growing up lives there, is because he wants to say to us, I don't look at human beings that way. I don't look at human beings on where they are on a ladder. He doesn't value human beings on that basis. God chooses peasant Mary, not Princess Mary, to be the mother of the king. And for a father figure, God chooses an everyday Joe named Joe to raise Jesus. He chooses Bethlehem, not Jerusalem. He chooses the manger, not a palace. He chooses dirty shepherds, not the VIP list, to get the birth announcement. And this isn't some quaint Christmas fluke because God wanted Jesus to have a country Christmas. That's not why this story is this way. This is always the way God operates. He doesn't always choose the most obvious, the conspicuous, the firstborn. He chooses Abel, not Cain, who was firstborn. He chooses Isaac, not Ishmael, who was firstborn. He chooses Jacob, not Esau. Ephraim, not Manasseh. He chooses old Sarah, not young Hagar. He chooses David, not his older brothers. He chooses an ordinary look at Leah over beautiful Rachel. He chooses women who could not have children and suffered the stigma of their lives to have these miraculous births, women like Hannah and Elizabeth and Rebecca. He chooses Nazareth, not Jerusalem, as the place Jesus will grow up. Why? Because God loves underdogs? No. He chooses Nazareth because he wants to say to you and I, no matter where we grow up, no matter what we've done, what our pedigree is, what rung on the ladder we're on, there is nothing you can do to save yourself. That's my job. That's why I came. I came to save you. Jesus came the way he did, lived where he did, died the kind of death he died to say to us, I'm going to save you by what I do, not by what you do. You see, the world, even many spiritual systems, are built on spiritual ladders. They say, if you can get to this rung, if you can get to this quality of life, if you can be this good, then you can get in. The problem is, where's the rung? How do I know? And Jesus said, I don't do ladders. I do relationship. I do relationship. All other religions say if you're good enough, if you're strong enough. Jesus says, here's how you come to me, just as you are. Just as you are. No matter how good or bad or rich or poor you think you are, you can get in today. You can get in today just on the basis of what you are. In fact, the prerequisite is to admit, I don't know that I could get in. And there's 2 lessons from Nazareth. Here's the first one. No matter what you've done, no matter who you are, how inferior you think you are, God can save you. And he can use you. He has a purpose, a big purpose for your life. And here's the second lesson from the message of Nazareth. There are a lot of talented, gifted people in the room. There's some people whose skin is a different color here today. There's some people here, you drove here in an Escalade. Some people drove here in a 27-year-old Toyota with rust. Some of us walked. We don't have a car. Some of you have a PhD behind your name. Some of you struggled to get a GED behind your name. Some of you have lived pretty clean lives. Some of you wondered, like Jim did in his story, if when you walked in the building, if it was going to cave in, or you're going to get struck by lightning. You wonder if God would ever have you. Some of you are politically very liberal. Some of you are politically very conservative. Here's the deal. Message of Nazareth, none of that matters in here. God said in the church, there's a different value. Because here's the deal. All of us have been created in the image of God. That gives us unbelievable value. And it's on the basis of that that we care about and love each other. That's the basis that should take place in the church. All those other things shouldn't rule us in here. And when they do, we're on the ladder. Herod's on the ladders. And God says, no ladders. No ladders. Just relationship. Just relationship. And that's the story of Herod. I mean, Herod plays a big role in the Christmas story, doesn't he? He does. In fact, in Matthew's story, he uses Herod's name nine times. Mary's only 4. But no matter how powerful Herod was, he couldn't get to Jesus, even when Jesus was at his weakest, most vulnerable point as a baby. And that's the good news for us. We don't have to let Herod get to us, ever, if we trust in the power of of this baby child. One more story, and this is the big story of Christmas. That was the little story. This is the big story. Little boy crawled into bed with his dad one night because the kid couldn't sleep. Mom was gone. And it's pitch black. And when the kid crawled into the bed, he was still not able to sleep. He felt good because he was in the presence of his father, but he still couldn't sleep. And so he said into the darkness, he said, Dad, is your face turned toward me? And his father said, Son, my face is always turned towards you. And the child was able to go to sleep. And here's the message that Jesus wants to say. It's why he came to the earth, is to say to us, hey, everybody, the Father's face is always turned towards you. Let's pray. And Jesus, we know that. We know that your face is turned towards us. It always is. And there are some here today, God, they've turned away. They're not facing you because of fear or anger. And I pray, Lord, that today there would be a softening, and that you would move around and you come face to face with those people and just reassure them, I understand. I get it. I'm here. Let me be your God. Let me lead you. Let me love you. Open your life to me. Give me that pain. Give me that fury. Give me that anger. I can handle it. I'm a big God. And for those of us, Lord, who've been walking with you for years, I pray that we would get a fresh sense of what you're about in our world and in our lives this Christmas. Amen.
surrendering all. Find me here, Lord, as you draw me near. I'm desperate for you. I'm desperate for you. I surrender. Drench my soul, His mercy and grace unfold. I hunger and thirst, I hunger and thirst. With arms stretched wide, I know you hear my cry. Speak to me now. I surrender, I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more. I 'Cause I wanna know you more. I wanna know you more.
Well, I'm glad you came for our first installment of Christmas Stories. We're going to pick it up again next week with another story. And we got some great things planned for next week as well. We've got the children's choir, baby dedications, and live nativity, including a camel. We found a camel. He'll be here next week. So anyway, great reason to bring kids especially. On your way out, if you thought, you know what, I'd like to get more connected at Crossroads, there's some Next Step people out there who would be glad to talk to you. See you next week.